It's a family of haircuts. Does everybody understand that? There's not one fade. Okay, there's a whole family of fades. And I swear to God, it's like they're inventing new ones every day. Okay? I refer to things in families of like a low fade, a high fade, or a mid fade. You know what I mean? The rest is just dependent on shape. So a high fade for me is 3 fingers above the ear. A low fade or mid fade for me is 2 fingers above the ear, and a low fade is 1 finger above the ear. Make sense? When you see like shapes like this that are round around the ear, that's what we call burst fade. Drops high to low, that's a drop fade. There's like a lot of different things. So when you see that terminology, that's really what it's referring to. Okay, so when we're talking about whether high, low, we're not talking about a delineation. Like a fade is a haircut that more or less blends, right? More or lless blends from 0 all the way up. You're not going to see the best fade of your life today, I guarantee it. But I am going to show you the process by which I've been pretty successful giving them to my clients. Okay, so what's happening here is when we're talking high, mid, low, we're talking about more where less the shadow starts to sit. You know what I mean? Where the shadow starts to become really obvious and noticeable. Some people like theirs to be super stretched out and blended and crazy so you just can't see anything. And some people like to see more of a weight line because what it does is it actually affects and balances out the shape. I've always been more of a slight weight line guy. I don't know if any of you have seen some of my work online, but like it almost always has some linear ridge somewhere. And I really love that look. Like it's kind of hard to do, it's kind of hard to get it like really nice and balanced. But there's just something about that I like. And so I just do the haircuts I like. Does that make sense? Cool, so don't judge it. What I'm going to do though is I'm going to start out really nice and low. I'm going to start out really nice and low with my adjustable clipper set all the way to 0. When it's all the way to 0, that is essentially the shortest hair we could cut at the turn of the century. Okay, using a clipper. Barbers back then had hand clippers. They didn't have one hand clipper, they had like 6 or 7 hand clippers out in front of them. And for every hand clipper it was, the blade from the next one was just a little bit thicker than the last one. Okay, and it goes up in about 1.8 millimeter jumps. You know what I mean? It's basically what it goes up in. So when they first made the 0s, like the smallest they could do, they've gotten a lot better at making metal stronger and thinner. So that's why they have like 2 zeros, 3 zeros, 4 zeros, 5 zeros. 5 zeros is about the thinnest that they're going to get, I think, because there's no point anymore. It's kind of like those razors that you buy at home that now have like 5 razors and a flashlight and a vibrator on them somewhere. It's like they don't need any more than that, right? So, okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my line here. I'm going to set a guideline. Every haircut works from a guideline. Every haircut. So when we talk about sectioning, I'm going to try to translate this so it works the same for both, okay? Every haircut works from a guideline. That guideline determines the shape of the haircut. If we're working here, pulling hair out and doing this sort of thing and elevating the hair out from the head, and we're setting a guideline somewhere, right? We can determine what angle we want that haircut to be by how we kind of angle our fingers, and then we set that initial line in there. That will dictate the haircut's shape for the rest of the haircut. It's the same with the fade. It's just our guideline is so much shorter that we can't cut it with scissors. Okay, so it's so much shorter. So the initial line that you put in there determines the shape of the entire haircut. And what we do is we use that guideline to be able to build up and move the rest of the haircut around. So I'm going to go down to a 0 here with my adjustable clipper. Just gonna make sure these, like I when I travel a lot and my shit gets dinged around a whole bunch and stuff, and like if I don't check this lately, I found out that I'm just scraping the shit out of people's faces. So we're all good. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna drop a line from just below that point here. I'm gonna drop it to somewhere around the occipital bone, and I'm gonna get to that point. Okay, so I'm gonna go right down to a 0 from maybe about a finger depth above the ear. Make sure that is all nice and clean. Now I am using the natural cutting position of the clipper. How many of you like to do this with your clipper inverted? Like so that you're doing this and punching that line in. How many of you like to do that? Yeah, you? Nice. Is it just because you're showing off? Is that why? Because this is basically what we call a soft line, all right? A soft line is when the clipper's in its natural cutting position, and what we're doing is we're just very slowly, very gently rocking away from the head shape as we go upwards, all right? Just very rocking away. If you want to create a soft line, the trick is keeping your elbow low. In fact, if you want to blend as you work up, the trick is keeping your elbow low. Because what happens is you take basically, if we don't want to push this line all the way up the head shape, keep your elbow low to the side, and you can see as I move up, you see how the natural lever position of my arm naturally pulls away from the head shape, right? As I'm holding my clipper, right? Good. If I pick my elbow up like this, you see the shape of the clipper and how I'm pushing that line, pushing that line, pushing that line. You want to blend, you want your work to blend faster and more seamless, keep your elbow lower and to the side and let your body's action. Yes.
Hair industry for a long, long time. So why do you keep taking classes right there?
How many of those green drinks you had? I appreciate that. I'm sorry. I make jokes because I get very uncomfortable when people compliment me. So you know the thing. I can't handle compliments. Thank you both. You know, guys, the thing about it is, and this is something that I was very lucky to get to share this past weekend in New York City. Was like I was in front of, I was at this thing called the DeCara Belmont Barber Mixer, and I literally ran in the door from a different event that I was on stage for, and I got up on stage. And the minute I got up there, I looked out in the audience, and like every barber that I follow on Instagram was standing in the crowd. And I'm just like, holy shit, like, what do I possibly have to teach any of you, right? I mean, it's the truth. I'm a above average barber that has like great big delusions of grandeur, I'm sure. But the problem with it is that it's education isn't about a person standing up and doing something that you marvel at, all right? Because that's really good. Like, I could just show up and you guys could watch me do a client and I wouldn't say a word. That's fine too, you know what I mean? For some people, they learn that way, but the truth of it is that for people to educate in this industry, people that get up and they want to share on YouTube or on websites or whatever what it is that they know how to do, it's not so that they can lord over you what they know, and it's certainly not so they can try and impress you. It's so that you can take those things, apply what applies to your own work, or the small ways that you can take things and make your own work better and surpass those people. I'm not going to be like amazing at this. I'm not a legend or an icon or whatever the fuck people write about me. I'm just a fucking barber. But I'm also a person that really loves this industry and loves to see people grow. And if you want to take one thing away from this that helps you get better than me at this, then good for you. Because that's really what we're doing here, right? All right. So, as you can see, I've got a nice little line here, and I'm really nervous because I haven't checked to see if it's level yet. That's always the most terrifying part. A trick to getting it level that I should have done, but I was busy talking about other shit, is this. A lot of the time I'll start using the mirror like this, where I will set here, I will set my line in, and I get to just pass halfway through the back, and then I come to this side and I'm like, oh shit, I don't know if that's going to be level, right? But the nice thing is if I just look up in the mirror, I can see the line on the other side and I can try and match it up like visually, right? So if I'm looking at this and trying to figure out if I matched it up, I didn't. So, but now I can. You see, like, this is again, like, don't let your ego get to the point where like, nah, I got this. So, like, you don't got this. Like, there's a point where you will learn that on the daily. There will be a point where you're like, no, I own this part. I'm amazing at this. And be like, nope, fucked it up. So, what I'm going to do, that's basically my guide. I set that high to that point. It's dropping a little bit in the back. It's not quite like a heavy drop fade. Like, I always think, well, maybe it is. It's close. But I always think that drop fade, like the shadow usually sits over the occipital bone or somewhere around that. So what I have now is I've got it down to a 0. How many hairdressers in the room? Anybody like a hairdresser in the room? How many of you kind of freak out at this point? Just a little bit. Yeah. Yeah. Because you look at it like, because you're not a barber. Like barbers do this shit all day long, so we're like, skin it, fine. Because that's not even that short. The funny thing is, like, all the hairdressers in the room are looking at this being like, oh my God, it's so short, like it's gone. Yeah. It's like scalp. But like 2 barbers are sitting here cold as ice being like, so? Right? So it's like, it's fine. Like, it's just about what you're used to seeing, okay? And what you're seeing right now is a really heavy contrast between quite dark and quite light. As we start to blend those things together, you're going to see that this starts to look darker over time to you. And what you see as impossibly short starts to change and makes you less afraid. And that's really it. It's just about being a little bit less afraid. So,
what kind of clippers are those?
Yes.
Who's got, yeah, hi.
What kind of clippers do you have?
I don't subscribe to any one. I'm not sponsored by any companies, but I am really fortunate in that Babeless like just made me my own custom one. Because these come in, yeah, they come in a whole bunch of different finishes that are like gold and shit like that, and they gave me a gold one, and then I'm like look at me, you know what I mean? Like, I don't have a pair of Yeezys on, I don't wear Supreme gear, so it's like, I look like I just got off a fucking horse, you know what I mean? So they're like, yeah, I see your point, and like, if we did one for you, would you use it? I'm like, if it's good, I don't know. Like, so they took a pretty big chance, and they're like, they couldn't decide which one they thought was more my style, so they made me both of these, and they just like gold and rusted, so they're like one of one. They're kind of cool. I like them. How do you pronounce that? Babeless.
Baby LAS.
Do you guys call it Babeless? Fabulous?
Fabulous.
I'm Canadian. Give me a fucking break. I mean, I haven't said out and about and all those other fun things you like to say. I'm learning my best here. Okay, let's cut hair, guys. So what I'm going to do, now what we have is we have a couple options, and it really depends how you like to approach this. How I like to approach this is determined by how long a hair I'm cutting off. Some guys, if I'm cutting off a really long amount of hair and I'm trying to make a nice fade through here, I don't just work my way up in small sections, bumping it all the way up, because at some point here the hair starts hanging over and it kind of makes you blind. And so what I'll do at that point is I'll put a guard on that's going to be taken up a little higher, maybe like a 1 or a 1.5, and I'll take that up to clear that out, and then I will blend that area. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you what that would look like. I'll take my 1.5 here, and my 1.5, and my 2 is pretty much the longest I go. And there's a reason why I go somewhere up there. But I'm going to take my 1.5 up here. I'm going to take my 1.5 all the way open, which makes it, oh, by the way, it's math time, all right? Do you guys know that barbering has actually got a surprising amount of math in it? Sucks, right? I thought there wouldn't be much. But what ends up happening here is if I have a 1.5 guard and I'm putting it on a clipper that is all the way open, when it's all the way closed, it's a 0. When it's all the way open, it is what? 1/2?
1/2, yeah.
So what does that make it? 1.5 plus 1/2 is, it's a 2. So when you have a clipper guard on, your clipper's open, doesn't mean that it's the length of the clipper guard, it's the clipper guard plus the setting. Okay, so that makes it a 2. 2 is the longest I go, and I can go all the way up to the corner on this thing now if I want to. To keep that corner in place, and this is one of the things that I see happen a lot, and one of the reasons why crowns get cut off a lot, is that elbow. If you lift that elbow, you are going to follow that head shape right up into that corner. And if you take that corner off, rather than leaving a little bit of buildup, the sides will be very short, but somewhat oval. That little bit of buildup is what keeps it square. Yes, my love?
If their crown has been cut off, how do you try to train, like, do you cut it so that it can grow back in? Or
Let's find out. So what I'm going to do here, all the way open, I'm going to work my elbow nice and low, which means that if you see it, when I'm working from this corner here, I'm working with my elbow nice and low. Do you see what happens at the round part of the head? Naturally, the lever action of my elbow pulls away from there. Now, I need to blend a little bit as I'm working. Somebody had asked me, how do you get it to look smoother when you're working with guards? It's very difficult when the guards get longer, because as the hair gets this length, it can start to flex. When it's really short, it's really rigid, but the longer it gets, the more it starts to flex, right? Which is why I don't use clipper guards usually above a 2, because as soon as they get above there, it can move around a lot. So what I do though is I like to work a lot on blending, and what you're going to see in my hand is probably like, it's my biggest secret weapon. They're a little expensive, so if you guys don't want to buy one for yourself, I understand, but this is my CVS nail brush that I got for 99 cents. It is a very high-tech piece of barbering equipment, and this actually helps to blend. You put pressure on the hair, you move the hair around. Combs only put channels in the hair, right? Longer things like that, they're uncomfortable. Some really stiff bristle brushes can be really uncomfortable if you're brushing over and over and over again. But these nice little soft, fine nail baby brushes and stuff like that are perfect for that sort of thing. So I get that to get that hair. What's that?
Right.
But I'll give you a 15% discount. All right, so here we go. Elbow low to the side, low to the side. And one of the things that I find really important is this guideline. This guideline is still my roadmap. I'm keeping the blade parallel to that guideline all the time. Okay, that's what's helping me control that shape, is by keeping that blade parallel to that guideline. Because if I'm on that guideline and I'm rocking away here, blending it as we move upwards, you can see that the shape of the weight line starts to go as well. And if that weight line starts to drop a little bit, the weight line is this nice shadow up here. If that weight line starts to drop a little bit, it means the hair is going to be longer in the crown. Right? So that's why I say that first line controls everything about your haircut. It controls everything about that shape. Okay. So what we're going to see is we're basically working a guide, and then I'm working my way from the top down. So a lot of people like to fade from the bottom up. A lot of people fade from the top down. I don't really subscribe to either. I subscribe to whatever the hair texture and whatever the finished product is telling me. The benefit of fading from the bottom up, okay, is that you will have a really, really nice blend. Okay, it's a really, really nice way to blend. You can get really nice shape and stuff in there. You control the whole shape really seamlessly. The problem with it is you can't control specifically the length at the weight line. You can't specifically control the top. If you have a priority of maintaining length somewhere, if you're like, I can't cut this any shorter, then start from there and work your way down, because it won't end up getting shorter, right? Otherwise, the other drawback from working from the bottom up is a lot of the times, some of you guys that do a lot of fade work, you'll notice it's like it blends really easy on one side, and then the other side takes you fucking ever, and it's like before you know it, you've chased one side way up, and then you go back to the easy side, and then you got to bump it up again, right? That's the thing. It's really hard to control that. Okay, so I'm going to work the bottom here. One of the things I'm going to do really quickly is I'm going to spray the hair just to control the hair on top before I start getting carried away. I'm going to control the hair on top with just some water. You guys like to use clips? Who uses like a lot of clips in guys' hair? Do you?
The Velcro clips, those are pretty cool.
Velcro clips too. Wow.
Those are fun.
My friend Harry gave me these last week. I'm just going to use this to make a point. TJ is standing there looking in the mirror right now. I want to get that hair out of his way. Does he look like TJ the cool rock star right now, or does he look like TJ the magic unicorn?
TJ, you look fabulous.
You look like a magical unicorn. Yeah, it's not that fun to sit and stare at yourself in the mirror when you feel like a tool. So I put a little bit of water in the hair just to control that. Everywhere. A little bit of water in the hair to control that, gets it out of the way, and I can work my way up.
See, 2 things I can do.
Love it. I hope they won't be the last things. We're on a roll, you and I. All right, so here we go, guys. See, I'm, again, low elbow. Elbow's not going up. It's staying low to my side, which means the natural rocking motion is pulling away at the corner, which is allowing me to use the head shape to determine the shape of the haircut, which, I mean, if you ask me, that's going to make it the most complimentary if the head shape determines the shape of the haircut. All right, now we want to start working our way down. We can see that very faint weight line at the top that's developed there, that tiny little corner. Good, you're going to need to be able to see that, because now I'm going to click this down closed, which means that I've turned it from a 2 to a 1.5. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start rocking my way through this. Now, a lot of people have a tendency to stare at the front edge of the plastic guard when you're doing this thing. That is not cutting anything, okay? That doesn't cut things. What cuts things is the little silver part behind it. The foils go back and forth. So get used to looking at that area. The only time you should be looking at this little like front of the teeth area is when you're trying to figure out where to rock away. By the time those teeth come in contact with that weight line, boom, that's when I'm rocking away. My rockaway motion is not like pushing in and pulling out. It's not stabbing the person in the head. It is really just a gentle tug like this to pull the blade away from the head shape, creating a little bit more length and blending up into your previous length. Okay, that's what we're doing. It's called a touch. So what we're going to do here is just kind of, as soon as I see those teeth go up through that weight line, there we go. So I'm at 1.5. You can hear it getting cut. I'm always a big believer in just like listening to the hair as it's getting cut. Because a lot of the time when you're cutting off just a fraction of a millimeter, you can't see the difference, but you can hear it. So you go through that section until it goes silent, because this is not hair getting cut, right? That's the sound of hair getting cut.
One thing I would say too, like the motion that he has with his elbow tucked in, you'll notice it because it kind of gets back to body ergonomics.
Oh,
A
yeah.
lot of times when you drop your elbow in, what tends to naturally happen is your thumb will naturally move above on the clipper. And when you do that, it isolates your movement in your hand, so it's more just rotation from your wrist versus your elbow. If you extend your hand over this way, naturally your elbow comes out. You tend to do more of a scoop motion. When you tuck your elbow in, naturally your thumb wants to move in as well, and that's what isolates that movement. It's more of a single control movement.
You ever feel like you've just been making something up your whole life until somebody that actually should know what they're talking
It's
about
like, yeah.
tells you that you're doing it right, and inside secretly you're like, yes, motherfucker.
I knew it.
That's what they call street cred. All right, here's what happened. What I'm going to do is just tilt him down now a little bit. One of the things I really like to, I try not to get too dramatic with the head tilt, okay? I'll tilt a little bit for ergonomics sake, but I try not to get like, don't bend them all the way down like this. It really stretches the skin out, and when they sit back up, you'll notice all those lines mush together and look a little weird, all right? So I'd like to tilt just a tiny bit, but not a lot. So I'm going to come through here, do my thing, and move all that hair out of the way, just over to the side here. There's my weight line. And I'll make a couple of passes through those sections just to make sure that that is consistent. So the 2 tricks to blending that I can share with you so far, in the back there, elbow low and to the side, and listening. Like, listen to it. Don't assume that it's all cut right. Wait until you go over that section and don't hear anything. You'll know. Brushing is the third one.
Let the hair speak to